Alright, today we're building another PC case here. It's going to be the Be Quiet Silent Bass 802. Now, it's not just another PC build that we have here. It's going to be my very own personal PC. Now, it's not a complete upgrade. It's actually just transporting from one case to another with a couple of upgrades that we'll get into later. But this is Be Quiet's mid-range ATX case, and it's focused on silence and also airflow. We'll get into that in a bit as well. And this is crazy. For a mid-range case from Be Quiet, it's very high-end. This is high-end for a lot of other case manufacturers. So even though it's mid-range, it's still very high quality in a lot of regards. So with that being said, let's get into this PC build. So the first thing I'm going to do is introduce you guys to this case. So up on top, we have our front I/O, and we've got a lot of functionality here. Of course, we got our power button, we have our Type-C port, and we have two USB 3.0 ports, and we also have a fan controller here. This is great stuff to see. Of course, here, audio jacks as well. And then on the top over here, you'll notice that we have some covers that we can take off like so. And these are completely magnetic and just drop into place. It's very easy to use and it's very easy to take off. And it's also interchangeable with an entire mesh dust filter if you want to do that instead of the more silenced version. Same thing goes for the front panel. Now, to take off the front panel, it's very easy. You just slide this up like so, and it has downward facing hooks that kind of slot into place. And you can also replace this front with a mesh front panel. So the fact that you have interchangeable panels is very nice to see if you want to focus more on airflow or silence. They're kind of giving you that option. And if you see here, it might be a little tough to see on camera how thick this foam is for noise isolation. It's insane. If you want to pop either of the side panels off, it's very easy to do. You'll notice these two little buttons, I guess, if you want to call it that, and you just push it in and it pops right out. And it's slotted in on the bottom, of course, to hold it in place when it is undone, and you push it back in place, and same thing goes for the rear panel. Probably one of the easiest methods and incredibly well designed. There's rubber bumpers on all the edges to insulate any sort of vibration or noise on metal. It's all very well thought out and engineered. Now I'm going to introduce you guys to the back of the case here. You'll notice over here these kind of covers, so to speak. They are aesthetic covers for covering up slots to put in any sort of hard drive cages that you want to put inside the case. So it gives you great expansion in terms of putting a whole bunch of drives in here if you really want to or need to. For me personally, I have 3 hard drives, not SSDs, just to put in here alone. The SSDs can go over here on this tray or this one over here, and I do have one SATA-based SSD that will be going on here. So seeing that is absolutely awesome. I love having these covers here, and I like popping them off and kind of covering up the cages, but the cages are white as well. So when you put them in over here, it's all aesthetic and all the cables run back to the back of the case here, obviously. So it looks really nice. Anyways, moving towards the middle of the case here, you'll see that we have a fan controller over here, or a fan hub that is. And that's all controlled through the front I/O. And then we've got one hard drive cage down here, and then we have another hard drive cage in this box down over here. And underneath this hard drive cage, there's actually space underneath. There's a lot of options over here. You can also invert the entire motherboard tray. So there's a lot of flexibility for a mid-range case. And on the other side of the case, we have 3 Pure Wings 2 fans, which are pretty decent fans. They're not PWM since they only have 3 prongs, but they are nice fans nonetheless to be included with the case. They also come with rubber grommets around the screws to also isolate vibration. There's just a lot of attention to detail in terms of noise insulation and vibration insulation as well. So those sort of things are not skipped out in this case, and it's apparent at every level of detail. You also notice these covers towards the bottom of the case here, which are on top of the PSU shroud, and this allows you to open up ventilation for the PSU or actually install an additional fan if you want to drive more air up from the bottom of the case if you just really want to optimize airflow. All right, and here's the accessories box where you'll see your 2 alternative panels if you choose to do so. Again, this goes to the front, and you got your screws and your Velcro straps, but essentially everything's in here except for the hard drive cage that was in the box on the bottom of the case. Now, the first thing we're going to start with is the power supply. We have a bit of a treat here today. We have the Dark Power Pro 1200 watt from Be Quiet, which is an 80 plus titanium rated power supply. Now, this is actually one of the best power supplies, and we're not just throwing a 1200 watt power supply into the build just for the sake of it. We have an RTX 3090, which is rated at 750 watts, but was actually tripping up my 850 watt Pure Power 11, I think, from Be Quiet. I get a little confused with these names. But anyways, it was tripping that power supply, and that was rated at 850 watts. So we're going with 1200. And you can see in the packaging here, this is actually very nice. And not only is this just very well packaged, all the cables are individually sleeved, which is something I was not expecting. This is insanely nice. All right, so the power supply cables are installed into the power supply. Next thing I'm going to do is actually install the power supply into the case. What you got to do is take off this little bracket here, and then you can put the power supply in and then attach the bracket, and then attach the bracket that's attached to the power supply back into the case. All right, so I removed that hard drive cage right here. Now the hard drive cage can't actually go up where these slot covers are because it's a 2 slot for the hard drive cage in the bottom over here, and these are all single slot. Anyways, there's room underneath for the cables to go under, and I just wanted to remove it so I have the flexibility to organize my cables accordingly. So that's why I removed it. Now we're going to take out the fans and install the motherboard. All right, motherboard is installed. I also forgot to mention that you have to attach the feet to the case. They're kind of embedded into styrofoam inside the packaging, so it's a little tricky. You might miss that, but they just kind of pop into place, and you can put them in at any time during the build process, so that'll be up to you. Next thing I'm going to do is install the fans that I have. I'm going to leave the top over here free in terms of clearance because that will go for the AIO, and I'm also going to do some pre-wiring, so let's get that done. All right, and just a little friendly reminder, if you are installing a fan down towards the bottom in the front of the case here, you'll need to get your screwdriver in over here, and the hard drive cage will be blocking this area, so you will have to remove that hard drive cage. It's not very hard, it's just a friendly reminder, and also you can remove these little panels that are on top of the PSU shroud, so also remember that. So it gives you accessibility to get your screwdriver down towards the bottom of the case and get this lower fan in. You can also pop off this little cover over here. If you can kind of see it, there's like a line going over here, then you can kind of take it off. It's a little tricky to do so, but it gives you full-on access to the other side of the case. All right, so I have most of the cables pre-routed. The next step will be installing the AIO that I got. And the one that I have here today is also from Be Quiet. It's the Pure Loop 280, so it's a 280 millimeter radiator. And if you notice, I'm also using my carbon colorway extension cables. I was originally just going to use the sleeved cables that came out of the box for this power supply. However, I decided to use the extensions because the cable combs from the power supply are very difficult to install on the cables, and even when they're installed, it does not look straight. It looks very straggly. All right, I have the mounting hardware installed for the AIO, so now I can take out this tray to mount the radiator to it and hopefully fit the other 140 millimeter fan on there. You just take it out, you line everything up, and then you just slide it back in and install it. It's fantastic. All right, the AIO is more or less installed. We did not have enough room to fit another 140 millimeter fan up there. That's plenty fine. I might upgrade this to a bigger cooler in the future. So that is a 9900K in there, which is, of course, not the latest processor, but it still runs very hot. Anyways, there's still good clearance up over here to get any sort of fan cables or pump cables routed through and plugged into the top of the motherboard. So I'm glad that there's still clearance there even after installing this AIO. And even if you didn't have clearance, you can always just unscrew the tray and just pull it out a little bit and make yourself some clearance and then screw it back in when you're all done. All right, I've got the drives installed right here. We got 2 right in this cage right over here, and then we put in that third extra like little spare cage that came in the box over here where these little slots come out. So everything works out just fine. I've got the SSD on one of the SSD trays over there. Aside from that, I'm really impressed that I have the clearance to route cables underneath this cage. Gonna install that GPU and get this cable managed, and then we'll get into the final thoughts. All right, cables are managed, still tidying up a couple of things here and there. Everything works. We got it to post. All the drives are up. Everything is looking good. I'll say it 100 times over. The Silent Base is one of my favorite cases to build in. With a case like this, there's not much else to ask for. Well, there it is. If you want to hear my recommendation for a PC case you should go with, this is going to be pretty high on that list. Anyways, I'm going to throw some B-roll at you guys, and as always, I hope you guys enjoyed watching the video, and I hope to catch you in the next one.